Next time on Dragon Ball Z.
You should never worry about making money in classic WoW, okay? The way that you make money is you just play the game and you just do things to make money. Like, I don't worry about making money, it just kind of happens. And if I don't have money, I just wait until I do have money. Like, I don't know, I never really worried about making money in classic WoW. Streamer benefits? Well, this is like, I'm talking about me from like back in the day, right? In 2006, I didn't have any streamer benefits. I was just a clown. Beg the fans. I never begged anyone for money in classic WoW. I never did that.
And now for something completely different.
Hey guys, what's up?
And servers are still down, by the way.
Another video for you. The winner of this month's poll is the profession picking guide for Classic World of Warcraft.
Okay.
So we're sort of continuing my beginner guide series here. I started with races, and then I did classes.
Good.
So today, professions. Following the scheme with my other videos, I'll try to cater more to the beginners into the classic scene. So just going over the basics here about what each profession is, and maybe some highlights and popular items of each one, their gold making potential, and
those are good items for me. Wait a second.
And popular items of each one.
So I'm gonna get this one, I'm gonna get this one, I'm gonna get this one, and I don't need that one because fire resistance is a waste of fucking time. I don't need fire resistance for molten core. I just do it.
Their gold making potential, and also strengths for both PvE and PvP. And I'll also throw in my personal picks for each class at the end. The first thing I'll say is that professions as a whole are much more substantial in Classic compared to
I like
current.
that word, substantial.
Is the best way that I can put it, I guess. It is a bit counterintuitive. More and more recipes have been added over time, so how is it more substantial in Classic? Well, we'll get to that for each profession, but in general, point one is that this was still before the age of hyper-balance, where everything must be 100% even with each other. There are items that only certain professions could use, and they'd give you a monstrous edge in both PvE and PvP. And point two is, with gold being so hard to...
Engineering is the only profession. Like in vanilla WoW, you really only have one profession to choose. Because engineering is expected. Like, you should have engineering. If you don't have engineering, you're dumb.
Come by in general. In the modern game, you kind of get gold passively just by playing the game through world quests or table missions, generous vendor prices, and so on. But back then, it's a struggle, so these professions are going to be vital. And point three is that some of them are quite grindy and difficult to level, which is just exacerbated by point two. So knowing what you want and what each one gives will save you a lot of time and money down the road, so you're not constantly switching around. We have 12 in total, and that's 9 primary and 3 secondary. Let's start with the primary professions first, specifically gathering, and work our way up from there. First up, we have the skinning profession. As you'd guess, you skin your slain enemies and harvest their precious hide. It's commonly paired.
I genuinely thought he put the picture up of me there. For just like that split second, I thought that was me.
With the leatherworking profession, where you can craft various leather and mail armor pieces. More on that later. But overall, it's not too different from the current game. I guess that maybe a unique quirk is that they're pretty vital for raid progression actually. You need to skin the broodmother of the black dragonflight, Onyxia, to harvest her scales, and those are used by leatherworkers to make a special cloak that allows players to survive the Nefarian fight in the Blackwing Lair. To skin her, you need to have a skill of 315, so with the cap being 300, you have to get special items and enchants to get you there, so there's more to it than just right-clicking enemies.
That was so fucking cool. Like, can we talk about how fucking cool that was? Like, do you have to have special items to, like, increase your skill of skinning? Like, I mean, I don't know. I thought it was just awesome. Like, I don't... Oh, man, dude. It's just, I don't know. Everything was in the game for a reason. There's, like, a certain level... I don't know, man. It's just so good. Like, I genuinely... I don't know how... You know how, like, people will look at, like, a pineapple... and use it as evidence for God because there's no way that a pineapple could just randomly begin to exist? Because it's like, how the fuck does a pineapple happen? You know what I'm saying? Like, and just like different, like massive, like just completely like perfect structures and things in the world that happen. And it's like, how the fuck could this ever happen if it wasn't divinely inspired? That's how I feel about Classic WoW. There are so many of these perfect things that happened. It's like God must have made this game. Like, it must have been like, it's like, you know, whenever they say that writing down the Bible was like divinely inspired by God, I think Classic WoW was the same thing.
You're going to want at least one Master Skinner along with your raids, because there are so many skinnable enemies that would otherwise simply waste away. So overall, a very important profession to have. Next up, though, we have mining, which is commonly paired with blacksmithing and engineering. And blacksmithing. Same sort of deal here. It's not hugely different from the current game. You go around and harvest various mining veins spread throughout the world. A minor difference being that each vein has multiple hits, so they're a bit more time consuming.
Y'all ever go to one of the fucking mines and then somebody else is mining and you start spam clicking it, then you start mining it and you get their fucking ore? Whew! That was good. I love that shit, man. I would do that all the time.
Assuming to harvest, and combine that with the fact that back then you could actually fail at gathering, and the increased gathering time in general could mean that you'd be clicking on the damn thing for like a minute. Their special resource is Dark Iron, which can be found in the Molten Core raid, although it's not exclusive to the zone. But you make bars from this, and blacksmiths need those to make some fire-resist gear, which is crucial for raid progression.
Molten Core is like amazing for
smelting them requires a bit of work though, as you have to complete a quest to learn the recipe, and you can only smelt them at the Black Forge, which is located deep inside the Blackrock Depths dungeon. There's also the Elementium ore, which you don't mine, but rather you loot off the technicians in the Blackwing Lair raid. But to smelt them, you have to be a miner. You learn the recipe from the elemental shaper Crixix, who's a hostile NPC found in the same raid. But if you have a priest, you can mind control him and converse with him, and he'll teach you the recipe.
I thought you just killed him and he dropped the thing.
Is most notably used for the creation of the Thunder Fury Legendary, which is the best tanking weapon in the game for Classic.
Yes, it is.
So, again, another crucial profession to have in your guild.
I'm getting it, by the way.
And as for herbalism, for those who feel more at home frolicking through a field of flowers, this is the profession for you. This is typically paired with the alchemy profession,
I'm gonna get on a first
and this is largely unchanged from the current game in terms of functionality. You go around picking flowers. That's pretty much it. A frustrating thing is that just like mining, you can actually fail at picking them up.
That's great.
Don't even ask me how that works. Maybe you're a bit too manly like me, so you have to focus your thoughts on more feminine things to properly pick them up.
That's a big boy.
But your big endgame material will be the Black Lotus, which is used for high-end flasks, and an item called the Gurubashi Mojo Madness, which you need for an optional boss in the Zul'Gurub upgrade.
Damn,
I guess one thing to say is that back then, you could only track one resource at a time on your minimap. Either herbs or mining nodes, not both. So for those who want double gathering professions, you may be better off just grabbing skinning as a second, unless you feel like constantly switching between herbs and veins.
Yeah, it's awful.
Next, for the crafting professions, let's just go alphabetically here, starting with alchemy. With this, you of course make a variety of consumables to aid you in your adventures, and you have 3 types, and that's potions, elixirs, and flasks. Potions are a bit overpowered in Classic because you can use multiple ones in battle actually. In the current game, you'll notice after using a potion, the cooldown only starts ticking after you've exited combat. It's why pre-potting before pull is so important, but in Classic, the cooldown starts regardless if you're in combat or not.
I kind of like that, but I kind of didn't.
And you have the stuff that you'd expect.
It's hard for me to say.
Health potions, mana potions, rage potions for you warriors out there, and potions to absorb certain elements. Fire, nature, and frost are going to be the biggest ones for PvE. You also have free action potions, which are abbreviated to FAP, which breaks and provides immunity to stuns and snares. Extremely crucial for PvP. You have potions to remove curses, diseases, poisons, potions to increase armor, and it goes on.
I actually have those ready for something.
As for the elixirs, these are more long-term effects.
The lesser ones, at least.
This was also before Blizzard distinguished between battle and guardian elixirs, so you could stack multiple offensive and defensive buffs. Typically, if they didn't provide the same stat increase. For example, you can stack an elixir of the mongoose with the Winterfall Firewater, but you can't stack a greater agility with a lesser agility since they're the same stat. And you also have flasks, which you can only have one active at a time, just like current.
Imagine if you could have all 3 flasks on at the same time.
Mana, immunity, but root and pacification, spell damage, and health. These take quite a large amount of materials to make, and they're only craftable.
Wait, so what was the damage flask? Like, I'm trying to remember
quite a large amount of materials to make, and they're only craftable at special
what was the damage
labs. In vanilla, only found in the Skullman's dungeon and the Blackwing Lair raid.
Titan so you don't die?
Yeah,
okay, so you don't
no one thought it prudent to, you know, build a lab that isn't surrounded by monsters.
Yeah, that's about it.
So, some may find that annoying.
Isn't it like 2% crit or
I personally think it's kind of neat,
it's fucking
and
insane.
It adds a bit of flair to the profession. It makes you think twice before blindly popping flasks, and it gives them more value on the auction house since you have to go so out of your way.
Yep.
You also, of course, have the power of transmutation, so you can play God if you want to. You can transmute essences, air to fire, fire to earth, earth to water, and so on. Mithril bars to true silver, iron to gold, thorium bars to arcanite bars. Arcanite bars, of course, being crucial in the creation of the legendaries, sulfurous.
My mom was a transmute master, and I remember she was so fucking happy, and this is during BC, whenever she transmuted a primal might, and it procced to 5 primal mites. Like, I mean, that's basically like, just imagine printing 500 gold in Burning Crusade. It just procced to 5, and she was like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. And I remember she would like want me to like give her materials to like transmute stuff, and she was really, really into it.
The Hand of Ragnaros and Thunder Fury, as well as other powerful items.
I need to make that line.
The catch is that these transmutations have a 2-day cooldown, and they all share with each other.
Actually, we too.
The good side, though, is that it creates a market for just your cooldown. A common practice back then was for someone to supply the alchemist with materials for a transmute and some gold to essentially buy their cooldown. So it's essentially a lazy man's way of getting gold. All it takes is a click of a button and a bit of social interaction, which I know is scary.
That's the worst part.
But if that fails, you can always just buy materials at the auction house and sell whatever you transmute for a profit. Overall, it's a pretty powerful profession for raiders. You can just buy all of this stuff on the auction house. They're not soulbound, of course, so if you're looking to min-max, it's not 100% essential to have alchemy. It'll just save you a ton of gold in the long run, and you'll even make quite a bit at the same time. Like
I mean, like, yeah, all the professions besides engineering, like, don't really give you anything particularly unique, except for a few things that aren't really that relevant in endgame, as far as I know, whenever I think about it. But I think that just for, like, the fantasy and, like, the, I don't know, everything, I am going to be a blacksmith in Classic. Like, I just like that the most.
Said, it's definitely the lazy man's way of making gold.
Yep.
I myself am planning on getting it on a plethora of characters and keeping stocked up on materials, so every 2 days I just cycle through them all and click a button to collect some gold. Good profession. Next, we have blacksmithing.
The best one.
This is your weapon and mail and plate armor profession, and it's a pretty common choice for the heavily armored paladins and warriors. In vanilla, as a blacksmith, you have the option in specializing in certain areas. You can either be an armorsmith or a weaponsmith, and if you're a weaponsmith, you can specialize further into either maces, swords, or axes.
Yep.
And for all of this, you have special exclusive recipes.
That was so fucking cool.
Here's some examples of some weapons you can make as a weaponsmith.
Yep.
More useful for that early endgame, of course. Feel free to pause if needed here. And here's some axes you can make as an axesmith.
Stuns the target for 8 seconds.
Arcanite Reaper is one of the best, if not the best.
Nightfall is like the main item, man. Like, this is actually so useful because it makes your target take more spell damage, right? So it just helps the casters in your raid a lot.
early two-handers in the game.
That's right.
And you'll see a lot of axesmiths running around just for that.
Arcanite
and
Reapers
it'll
fucking
definitely be a hot
ridiculous.
seller in the auction house.
That's what I'm gonna do.
Quite expensive to make though, requiring 20 of those Arcanite bars that alchemists make. They can also make the Nightfall Axe, which is highly sought after for its debuff. Typically used by off-tanks, I believe, to maximize the raid damage.
Yep.
As for hammersmiths, they don't have anything too crazy really, and that's because the specializations for maces were stuns back then.
Yeah,
People wanted axes or swords mainly because those gave increased crit and extra swings for rogues and warriors, whereas the mace stuns were really only handy for PvP. And here you have your swords. I think the most popular one here is the Sage Blade, but this won't be available until Phase 5 since they originally released quite late in Benight's lifespan. Armorsmith has a little more viability past that early endgame gearing, as they have some pretty powerful recipes. The Lionheart helmet and the Titanic leggings are two of the more popular ones, as they're incredibly good for DPS plate.
Maybe I should just
However,
do that
just like the Sage Blade, keep in mind that not everything is going to be in at launch. They specifically mentioned the Titanic leggings, in fact.
Because they're OP as fuck, right?
And you also have all of your Dark Iron plate. Back then, you needed fire resistance for the Ragnaros fight in the Molten Core, or if there was a 3-minute mage in PvP or something, and through some quests and rep grinding, you can get plans for the Dark Iron gear, which has a ton of fire resistance. It's going to be crucial for that early raiding, so you'll be a valuable guild member if you get all the plans. Other key items will be your Sulfuron Hammer, which you need for the Hand of Ragnaros.
I need this, guys.
You can also make Sharpening Stones and Weight Stones, which are buffs to your weapons.
It's a 2%
this is more handy for Alliance players because the Horde want that Wind Fury. Wind Fury, of course, being a buff that only Shamans have. It puts a buff on your main hand, so you don't want any stones blocking that.
Yeah, obviously.
And keys are also going to be your best friend. Sometimes you'll find yourself without a rogue in the group, or maybe you have one and they just haven't leveled their lockpicking, and in certain dungeons you'll have these locked doors blocking your path, or locked chests taunting you. These keys can be a lifesaver and make your group members quite happy. All in all, Blacksmith has some pretty good potential for...
There's one time I opened up a chest with a fucking key, then somebody wanted me to roll on the items that came out of it. Yeah.
Gold making, but it requires a lot of time farming the materials and luck getting all of the good patterns. For the high-end stuff, you really have to put some effort in, but if you do it, and the earlier that you do it, the more you'll make.
Yeah,
and they have some options for some steady gold too. Remember those Sharpening Stones and Weight Stones that
those
I
are really good.
Earlier.
Holy shit.
Again, though, that's going to be more favorable to the Alliance.
I'm going to have to use that.
And you can also make Enchanting Rods, which enchanters need, so those will always be a good earner as well. But next, we have the Engineer. Those who like messing around with silly gadgets and explosives will find themselves quite at home with this profession, and many would agree that it's, quote, the best one for min-maxers. We'll get into that in a bit. The Field Repair Bot is present in Classic, and it's just as useful as ever. Even more so, in fact, since there aren't any repair mounts.
That was the best thing they ever added, was a repair
for any raiding guild back then.
It was amazing.
They can also make a selection of guns and ammo, making it an appealing choice for hunters.
I remember I made
this gun was dubbed the Super Soaker in my guild for obvious reasons. And here you have your hunter ammo. You'll be needing plenty of this, as you burn through it faster than you'd think. Keep in mind that even if you don't use guns, there exist NPCs in your main city that trade bullets for arrows, making this an appealing choice for even bow wielders out there.
Really? I didn't even know that.
They can also make a helmet for underwater breathing, which is more useful in Classic due to the shorter breath time in general. And you also have a selection of trinkets, which is notable since good trinkets are much harder to come by in Classic.
Holy shit, yeah.
My favorites were the elemental ones, where you could reflect spells.
Oh,
I always kept an ice reflector on hand for those pesky mages.
Fuck mages.
And the fire one is especially useful if there's a 3-minute mage gibbing you.
Yep.
You also have the goblin jumper cables, which can sometimes bring a player back from death. Being a rogue who's quick with the vanish when things went awry, this saved quite a few corpse runs for my party, I'll tell you what. It's also great for a hunter who feigned death. And we also have the stun bombs. As an engineer, you have access to a variety of grenades that deal some AoE damage and also incapacitate your enemies.
500 damage?
There are a bunch of different ones,
Holy
but
shit.
as I remember, most people stuck with the iron grenades since they were the most cost efficient.
Yeah,
there are higher level ones that
Holy
do more
shit,
damage,
that was worth a
but
lot
they
of
cost an arm and a leg to make, so
Yeah.
it really depends on how much you're willing to
God
invest
damn.
there. So these are absolutely crucial for PvP.
That's crazy.
But they're still pretty good for PvE as well.
It's a PvE music? Yeah, it's the actual one.
And you also have
Sound
the
music.
Sephorium charges, which are equivalent to the blacksmith keys, just a little more brute force.
Bombs are better.
Similar to blacksmith,
They're
you
more
have
fun
different
than keys.
expertises to choose from. Just two this time, and that's gnomish or goblin. Gnomes focus more on gadgets, such as the mind control cap. This can sometimes mind control a humanoid target, including players,
We watched this,
and
remember this?
other times it'll do nothing, or you'll be mind controlled to them. The battle chicken is quite nice, as it occasionally provides an attack speed buff to your group. 5% for 4 minutes, making it another appealing choice for endgame rating.
Wait, what?
This is going to be a must for min-maxers and high-end rating guilds.
What the fuck?
And you
What
also
is
have
it?
the rocket boots, which are a classic.
Wow.
These of course give you a really good speed boost, lasting for 20 seconds. The death ray trinket is another popular choice, requiring a decent cast time, but delivering some big burst damage to your target, even
Look at all that
capable of
fucking
critting.
Windows Movie Maker
It's
shit.
more used for PvP, since it's all about that burst. The only downside being that
dude
it does
just got
drain
fucking
some of your
deleted.
life. Most of these gadgets do have their downsides because they can fail in spectacular ways. The boots can give you a fear effect, the mind control cap can reverse like I mentioned, the belt can banish you for 20 seconds, and so on. Another downside is
Doesn't
that
really
a lot of
seem
this
as
stuff
bad.
is equipped, meaning that you have to forego your normal equipment and lose some vital stats.
I think that makes it more
But
fun.
you can also make a teleporter to Gadget Sand as a gnomish engineer. With traveling being so time-consuming in Classic, stuff like
I'm
this
actually
is
gonna
going to
be
be all the
engineer
more
just for that,
valuable, so this is going to be a must if you decide to go gnome. A benefit of this is that it's pretty close to Silithus, so it's a big time saver when the gates of Ahn'Qiraj open up. And as for Goblin Engineering, as I said, these guys specialize in
Not as big of a time saver as pretending to be AFK and waiting for your guild to summon you.
bombs. They also get some rocket boots, which are arguably worse than the gnomish ones.
Yeah, those go
because
fast
if they
as
fail,
fuck, I'm
they
pretty
break,
sure.
and you have to craft new ones
Wait,
all over
what?
again. There was a bug that you could use to bypass this, but since
Really?
they said Official Classic won't be
That
emulating a lot
sucks.
of these exploits, I wouldn't count on this
Oh my
making it to
God.
the game. Their helmet is the Rocket Helmet, which is basically a charge and a 30-second Disorian
Stupid fucking
and a little
goblins,
stun
man.
to yourself.
What do you expect?
You saw this all the time in the old PvP videos, and it's going to be a lot of people's main reason for going Goblin. Goblin
Yeah, this is what
engineers
people were
get the
using me
Everlook
for.
teleporter, which brings you all the way to Winter Spring. Not as useful, in my opinion, than the Gadget Sam one, since there aren't any raids nearby really. It is kind of close to Ashara though, which holds Azurgos, and with Winter Spring being a higher level zone than Tanarus, it's also a better spot for high level herbs and mining nodes and whatnot, so maybe a bit faster for farming. But another popular item of theirs is the Goblin Sapper Charge, which deals some damage to yourself, but also to everything around you.
That is so fucking OP, dude. Like, this sapper charge is ridiculous. Like, especially whenever it's so fucking dumb, man. Like, I'm gonna use these as soon as I get the ability to, and you can just fucking delete everybody. Yeah, it's pronounced herbs, right? That's why there's the H at the beginning. Herb. Okay, 1 second here. Like this, how can I confirm? I don't need you to confirm that people are using my girlfriend's picture as clickbait on Pornhub, okay? I'll just take your word for it. You don't need to follow up with that. Thank you.
450 to 750 in fact, which is quite a lot,
It's not a
and with
big
a
deal.
5-minute cooldown. You may be hollering that this is imbalanced and that engineers have an obvious edge here.
They do.
But again, it's just part of the game
Well, they do.
before everything had to be 100% balanced
Yeah,
with
they're
each
better.
other.
Engineers
Those
are
of you
better.
who've been paying close attention
Get
may
mad.
have noticed that while these recipes require certain specializations to learn,
Yep.
most don't require them to use. You can switch specializations in Classic, either by relearning it entirely, or by using a special book that was introduced in patch 1.10. So
Really?
some people, if they choose, can make these gnome or goblish-only
then they
trinkets or
swap back
items,
over.
and then switch to the opposite specialization.
Shit, dude, I had no idea.
This is kind of getting out of the scope of the video though. Like I said, I just wanted to cover the basics, and if I keep going, I'll keep you here for like 3 hours, so let's move on. All of this is to say, though, engineering has just amazing potential in Classic due to the unregulated nature of the game back then. It's going to be quite a popular choice for both PvE and PvP, and the only downside really is your gold-making potential. It isn't hopeless, but you can do a lot better with other professions, I feel. Engineering, when I played it back then, was always just a gold sink rather than an earner, because you constantly have to make these bombs as you use them up, and a lot of the items that you make require engineering to use, which hurts the demand. There's not much point in buying engineer stuff if you can just make it yourself. For the most part anyways. There are some exceptions. I think that a majority of people will go gnome, in which case the sapper charge will be a good earner since they can't make it themselves.
Yeah, gnome is just superior.
Remember, you can switch from gnome to goblin after you make your gadgets and get the best of both worlds, but not everyone is going to know about that. And engineers can also make the best fishing lure in the game, which you need for high-level fishing. And they can also make the salt shaker, which is required for leatherworkers to make one of their crafting materials. So, again, another great profession, and I have a lot more to say, but I've spent way too much time on this one already. There are plenty more handy gadgets that I haven't mentioned, but I'll just have a link to them in the description, so you can go through that yourself. This is about the halfway point, so we'll probably call it a video right here. I still have enchanting, leatherworking, tailoring, and all of the secondary professions to cover, along with my personal picks for each class. But we'll continue that in part 2, which I'll have linked in the description whenever it's finished. Sorry to cut you off, but I kind of need a break here. This is quite the lengthy subject, and I still want to be fairly thorough, so I'd prefer to have it in 2 parts.
That's a lot of stuff to talk about in professions for Classic, though. There's a lot.
Like it if you liked it.
There's a video right there, okay, guys?
Peace.
Farewell for now, mortals. We hope you enjoyed today's video. See you again soon.
So let's go down and we'll look at the comments real quick. Sorry, my voice might sound different. Clickbait only took you 9 minutes to tell me social interactions necessary. Literally unplayable. That's true. Let's see. Corrupted Ashbringer icon, bottomless bag. What is this here? Should I pick gathering professions to make some money? You should never worry about making money in Classic WoW, okay? The way that you make money is you just play the game and you just do things to make money. Like, I don't worry about making money, it just kind of happens. And if I don't have money, I just wait until I do have money. Like, I don't know, I never really worried about making money in Classic WoW. Streamer benefits? Well, this is like, I'm talking about me from like back in the day, right? In 2006, I didn't have any streamer benefits. I was just a clown. Begged the fans. I never begged anyone for money in Classic WoW. I never did that. Now, I would figure out different ways to get money from other people, but I didn't actually beg for money. Back then, I played the game like a normal person. It wasn't really until Burning Crusade that I really kind of, you know, I really started turning into a real piece of shit. Everyone did? I never did. Never begged for money. I swear to God, never. Never. From scammer to beggar?
Hey guys, what's up? Mad Season here, back with another video for you. We're finishing off the profession guide here, so let's get right into it. In part 1, we covered all of the gathering professions, and also alchemy, blacksmithing, and engineering.
The only ones
and
that are
today,
important.
we're finishing it off with enchanting, leatherworking, tailoring, the secondary professions, and at the end, I'll also give you my personal picks for each class. Starting off here though, let's talk about enchanting. Enchanters buff up your gear with stat boosts and even weapon procs. Today, it's just rings and weapons pretty much, but in Classic, you'll find that you have a plethora of different slots that you can enchant your gear with. Your cloak, your chest, bracers, gloves, boots, your shield, and weapons are all enchantable with...
See, they should do this now. Like, I don't know why they took out enchants. Like, you can't fucking enchant your gear. You can't reforge it. You can't put gems in it. You can't do all of this other shit. every single piece of gear, you should have like 2 or 3 things you can do to it to make it more interesting. This is the way it was in Mists of Pandaria. This is how it was. Like I always complain and, you know, talk shit about Mists of Pandaria, but I genuinely do think that was one of the high points, was character customization. You could do so many different cool fucking things with your character back then, with like gear and everything, and I liked it a lot. Gear, yeah, sockets, everything. Like Titan Forge it, that wasn't until later. They didn't have Titan Forging in Mists.
The variety of boons
is fucking great.
And even what you enchant is much more diverse. Not just main stats like agility or strength, but also things such as spell power, increased mana, healing power, mana regeneration, defense skill, dodge chance, elemental resistances, stealth, fishing skill. Remember earlier when I said that these professions are much more substantial?
Aye.
It's ridiculous how many enchants there are, and you'll make a lot of friends if you go to the trouble of tracking down all of the rare patterns. And of course, copious amounts of gold. The only guy I knew who hit the gold cap back in vanilla, which I believe was 214,000, was an enchanter. He was—
No fucking way, dude. No fucking way did anybody hit the gold cap in vanilla WoW. I remember there was this one time, this guy, what was this? It was like in Burning Crusade, the first time somebody ever hit gold cap. And it was this hunter, and they wrote an article about it. It was like a dwarf or like some sort of hunter. They did. Find me some evidence, man. Nobody fucking did.
Sort of the extreme, because he was in the #1 guild for a faction. This was back when enchanting patterns dropped off of high-level raid bosses.
No fucking way.
Particularly, you'll find a bunch in the AQ40 raid when that unlocks. So at the time, the supply was very limited, and for those who know basic economics, know that having a monopoly equates to tons of gold. I'm a believer that the raids will be cleared much quicker this time around, so I don't think it'll be as extreme, but I mean, you can only clear them once a week still. Regardless, it'll be a good moneymaker, especially if you know what you're doing. Some popular enchants would be Crusader, which was a strength proc for melee.
We need to get this
You needed Righteous Orbs,
I really need to get that for myself.
Dungeon mainly. I spent quite a while in that place just for those. And Agility was a good one for hunters and for the offhands of rogues. And you also have spell power and healing power for the casters, and all of those various stat increases I listed earlier. And they can also make weapon oils, which are sort of the equivalent to the blacksmith's sharpening stones and weight stones. These increase spell power and spell crit for caster DPS, or mana per 5 and healing power for healers. Something to note here is that this is before the advent of vellums. You can't simply enchant one and throw it on the auction house. To enchant...
You just, what you would do is you just simply enchant the same fucking thing over and over. Like, you'd try to literally, like, you'd be like, you'd find some level 2, be like, hey, man, put your gloves in trade. And you give them, like, plus, like, you know, 5 agi. And you're like, oh, my God, thanks, mister. And you're like, yeah, sure, bro, no problem, man. Have fun. And then you'd ask him for, like, you know, half of his copper, which is, like, 5. And that was basically how it used to work.
You have to put it in the do not trade window. And you enchant it from there. A downside, obviously, is that it's a little more cumbersome, but a plus is that it promotes more interaction between players, which is one of the main aspects you'll find with the game. I actually prefer it this way, if you ask me. You may be wondering what profession to pair this one with, as herbing, mining, and skinning aren't related. Usually it's tailoring, and that's because it's really the only self-sufficient crafting profession. You get the materials for tailor just by looting cloth, and you can make green items to disenchant to stock up on enchanting materials, but we'll talk more about that later. Next up though, we have leatherworking. This is the leather and mail counterpart to the blacksmith, of course aimed for the shaman, rogue, and druid, and hunter, and you can also make some miscellaneous stuff, such as quivers and ammo pouches for the hunters, and a selection of cloaks. Similar to the blacksmith, you have a variety of resistance gear that you can craft, which will be crucial in raiding. The fashion is questionable,
wow, you can look
but
like
hey,
that.
It gets the job done, I suppose.
What a fucking idiot.
On a serious note, though, you're going to want at least one of these in your guild to equip everyone with the proper gear, whether it be for fire, frost, or nature resistance. They also made the Onyxia skill cloak, which, as I mentioned earlier, is required for the Nefarian fight in the Blackwing Lair. They can also make armor kits to upgrade your chest, legs, hand, or feet gear slots, The most useful of which being the core armor kit,
Devil Sword set?
which
Yeah,
provides a
I guess
boost
you're
in
right about
defense,
that. Yeah, it's
but
true.
you need a rare pattern for that from the multi-core
That's a good
raid.
point.
Aside from that, though, you just have a bunch of good gear in general
Wait,
that
you can
can make
craft
for leveling
those? Holy
or
shit.
the early end game. They have a few sets here and there that'll be best in slot for that pre-raid gearing.
Yep.
It's also another profession that's split up into 3 specialties, and that's tribal, elemental, and dragon scale leatherworking, each
Damn.
catering to certain classes.
I forgot all about this
Elemental and tribal are for leather wearers, so druids and rogues here. Usually, agility wearers go for tribal, mainly because of the Devil Star set, but
Holy
you also
fuck.
have the Corehound belt pattern, which is your fire resist intellect belt. And as for elemental, you have the Storm Shroud set.
Oh, this is
I
like
think
for
tanking
shamans,
druids
right?
used a couple pieces of this, although it's not
Oh,
too
no,
great, so
it's
don't get too
leather. It
crazy
must be
with
for
that.
druids.
And you also have more fire resist gear in general, which is
Right.
handy, but they're also quite expensive to make, so it's kind of rough. Again though, I'll have links to each recipe for these in the description.
Damn.
And Dragon Skill is your male specialization,
Okay.
so hunters and shamans here.
Okay.
Here's some examples of what they can make.
Bunch of garbage, basically.
So the biggest strength of leatherworking
bunch of
is going
fucking
to be
garbage.
that resistance gear. It really depends on how much you value that initial gearing process, I guess. Maybe when the game first launches, you put more value in it, but as the game progresses and better raids come out, that balance is going to shift more and more away from these pre-raid items. Although that's not entirely true, as there are some patterns to be released with certain raids. As for gold making, just the gear in general is going to be your moneymaker. As I mentioned, they have certain items that are early best in slot for certain classes. One of their more powerful ones being the Devil Sword 2-piece set, which I showed in the tribal section. I remember that rogues always wanted this before stepping into raiding. And you also have that core armor kit that I mentioned earlier.
This is actually really
Now
good.
the pattern for this
I
isn't
forgot about
easy.
that. Yeah, this is
it's a
fucking
drop
amazing.
from the Molten Core raid, so it might take a while, but once you
I think this is whenever it got buffed up and it did the stat squish. Permanently increase the defense value. Oh, defense value. I thought it said armor by 3. Never mind. I
get in,
got
it'll be
confused
one of the more
myself.
steady ways of earning gold as a leatherworker. Of course, the earlier you get it, the better. I also mentioned earlier that engineers could make
3 armor,
leatherworkers a
dude.
salt shaker. Using this and some deep rock salt, every 3 days you can create some refined salt, which you need for cured rugged hide, which is used for a variety of recipes. Since it's on a cooldown, it gains some value, so it's another thing you can just pop once every 3 days for some easy gold. One of the ultimate lazy
I'd
man
forget
methods
about that after a
would be
week.
to have a bunch of alchemists and leatherworkers,
I'd totally forget. Fuck
and
it.
have just one character's herbing and alchemy to feed yourself materials to level all of it, and just keep spamming these cooldowns for some near passive gold. It is easier said than done, since leveling is so time-consuming.
Wait, you can have a
in
gorilla
Classic,
as a pet in
but
Classic?
hey, there it is. And lastly,
Really?
for non-gathering professions, we have
Fuck,
the tailor,
I had no idea.
which is everything to do with cloth. Armor, bags, and also the cosmetic shirts. In
Yeah, I
terms
didn't
of
even know
gear,
that.
we have a similar story going on with leatherworking. You have a ton of resistance gear, which is always going to be crucial. Fire, frost, and nature, and a bunch of leveling and general raiding gear. Some items
Pause this here. I want to draw attention to something. I just said gorilla in the chat. And nobody posted tryhard or anything like that. Nobody made any racist connotations at all. Good job, number 1. Great job, guys. Didn't even bring it up. The idea that these like stupid little spurgs are going to just go over and use another black person emote if you ban the one that's obviously associated with racism, clearly disproven right there. They don't have a plan B. The only plan B they have is the one their mom should have used.
of note are the Robe of the Void for warlocks, True Faith vestments, the Robes of the Archmage, and the Robes of Winter Knight are some of the higher level craftables, to name just a few.
That's actually really
You also
fucking
have
good.
things like the Spider Belt, which is quite handy for PvP, so that'll be a good moneymaker. The main difference this time is that tailoring doesn't have any sort of specialization to spec into, which sets it apart from
They did that
blacksmithing and leatherworking.
in BC, right?
So a little less depth, I
Like
think,
Frost Suite
but also
and
more
Spellweave
freedom,
tailoring,
since you
I
can
think.
learn every single pattern. It just depends on your perspective, I guess. They also, of course, make bags, which are always in high demand. We did get some profession bags in vanilla, such as the herb satchels and enchanting bags and whatnot, and even soul shard bags for the warlocks, but also the normal bags, obviously.
Yeah, I'm waiting, Jimmy, for the service.
Your biggest one being the bottomless bag, which requires a rare pattern. And
this shit for Mooncloth, that I remember whatever it was, that shit was expensive. Like, it's up? Oh, is it really? Okay, well, I'll finish the video and then we'll probably get ready for servers back up. Okay, well, let me go ahead and I'll relog and see if it's going to work, okay? And I'll see if I can log back in. Okay, great. All right, yeah, we'll have to get ready for Sunken Temple soon. Let me finish this video and then we'll have to start it. Hopefully Asfond will still be able to go and we'll have the group.
A ton of materials, but again, if you can get the pattern, you're all set. As for gold making, the bag market is going to be your most steady source of income. Certain pieces of gear will be in higher demand than others, especially in the pre-raid gearing, and as these raids release, you can bet on resistance gear always seeing a surge in activity. And they do also have a cooldown mechanic like alchemists and leatherworkers.
See, that's what that. All right, I'll be right back, dude. I love that shit where you can turn Mooncloth into Fellcloth, or like the other way around. That was great. Sorry about that, boys. I'm back.
Time it's Mooncloth. Every 4 days, you can purify 2 Fellcloths into 1 Mooncloth, and this is used for a variety of high-level gear, and also that bottomless bag that I mentioned earlier. So another good choice for the lazy man's way of earning gold. The only caveat here is that you can only craft it at these moonwells, which are located throughout the world. Not as hardcore as the alchemy lab though, since it's all outdoor content. So
imagine having to go to different places to craft different pieces of gear, because that would make sense in the lore. Like, vanilla WoW made sense. And I know, like, oh, well, yeah, sure. Oh, it makes sense that you can magically summon a horse out of nowhere and cast fireballs. Yes, obviously, there are some instances of it not completely making sense. But overall, it made a lot more fucking sense than the later expansions did. After Wrath, shit stopped making sense. That's the truth. They stopped caring about continuity.
It's all soloable. And lastly for this video, I'd like to cover the secondary professions. These are professions that everyone can and should get. You don't need to choose between these or anything else, and there are no downsides to learning them.
They disabled the
That's cooking, fishing, and first aid.
Fucking stupid.
Talking about cooking and fishing here first, these really go hand in hand. Cooking was pretty much designed to be leveled from fishing, so you definitely want to have both of these. For fishing, you fish. It's pretty self-explanatory. In Classic, it's more time-consuming. Over the years, they've sped up fishing to make it more appealing to players, but in Classic, you'll find that your cast bar moves much more slowly, so it requires a lot more patience.
Imagine thinking, why do people not like fishing? It's because it's fucking boring. Why are there not boats that allow you to travel out into fatigued land in the game and hunt whale sharks? Like, why is that not in the game? What are you doing, Blizzard? Where the fuck is that? Like, yeah, come on. Like, that'd be fucking amazing.
But it's also important because, like I said, you use it to level cooking, and there are also some fish that you need for alchemy, so if you took that profession, that's all the more reason to learn and level this. And there's also the Stranglethorn Vale fishing tournament, which has some unique prizes tied to it. This is, of course, the weekly fishing extravaganza, where everyone rushes to the Stranglethorn Vale zone and race to collect 40 speckled tasty fish.
Delicious.
The first person to turn them in gets some nifty rewards. It's always quite a fun and hectic time, even more so in Classic,
Nobody gave a shit
the
about
traveling
that
options are much more limited. There's also the Gazrenka boss in the Zul'Gurub raid. you need fishing to summon them, so you'll
What
want...
I'm going to do to get the fishing tournament done is I'm going to hire people on the opposite faction to kill every single person that's trying to fish up the fish so I get them first. And then I'm going to have my guild kill people on the other faction that are also trying to fish. And I'll figure out every single different area we can get, and I will make sure that I get the thing. And like that, listen, dude, they'll just kill you? No, they won't. I'll give them money, because how are they going to... Like, why would they kill me? Like, they're not going to get any money for that.
How's bring at least one master angler along with you when you step foot into this place.
It's against US.
You can also fish up some Rumsey Rum, which is an alcohol buff. You can have one alcohol buff in Classic, and this is the best stamina one, giving you 15 for 15 minutes. And as for cooking, food buffs are still a thing in Classic, just as important back then as they are now. And some popular ones will be the grilled squid for agility wares, which, what do you know, the materials for which require fishing. The smoked desert dumplings for strength users, and you also have Dirge's Kickin' Chimeric chops for your stamina, but you'll only get the recipe for this once the AQ40 event starts.
Yep.
There really aren't any huge differences between current and Classic as far as its main functionality goes. You cook food, and you get food buffs. Pretty simple. For both cooking and fishing, the gold making potential is quite high, as there will always be people who are too lazy to cook their own food, or alchemists who don't want to level fishing. You can always make money by selling high-end stat food, or just the raw fish. Fishing is actually pretty powerful in the fact of how simple it is. You don't need any special recipes, or flip anything on the auction house. You just need a bit of patience, that's all.
Which is how it should be.
You don't even need to be high level. There are low level fish that you can make a killing off of, and if you want to afford your mount training by 40, this will probably be one of the best professions for that. And as for first aid, this is now actually removed from the current game, and not only is it present in Classic, but it's actually extremely vital, even if you're a healing class. This profession is based around the use of bandages and anti-venom, and it serves as a way for on-the-fly healing no matter the class. I say that this is more important simply due to the lack of overall self-healing in the Classic game. Today, every single class has a way of healing themselves. The Crimson Vial for rogues, Victory Rush for warriors, or Acceleration for hunters, and so on. In Classic, however, you don't have any of this stuff, so any form of healing is going to be that much more valuable.
Yeah, when warriors got self-healing, it was great.
It was removed in the current game. Once everyone got all of those self-heals, no one really used first aid anymore. You can bandage not only yourself, but also other players, as long as neither of you are getting hit. So it's mainly used out of combat, or when the enemy's attention is elsewhere.
I'd say that.
And this is of course multiplied 10 times over in PvP. As a rogue, your wombo combo will be to blind your opponent and get off a full bandage before you re-stealth. And the same for mages with polymorph, warlocks with fear, and so on. Its gold making potential, as you'd guess, is next to nothing. You need first aid for the bandages, so the demand really isn't there. But that's about it. In summary, you've probably gathered just how much more depth and impact these professions used to have. To kill Nefarian, you needed a healthy stock of Onyxius skill cloaks, and to make the cloaks you needed a leather worker, but to learn the recipe, you need to kill her first and turn in her head, and to get the skills you need a skinner, but to skin her you need a special dagger, which only drops off a level 60 boss. And that's not even getting into all of the resist gear that you can only craft, or the creation of the legendaries, Thunder Fury, or the Hand of Ragnaros. Whether it be from going into certain specializations, or getting those ultra-rare patterns, you can really spend a lot of time honing your professions and exploring what they have to offer. They also promote more interaction in general, from things like the lack of vellums, so only trade window enchants, to flasks requiring alchemy lamps, which of course you need other players to clear to, but also in the sense that many of your recipes will need items from other professions. You need enchanted leather to make this item, so okay, I need to find a skinner and an enchanter then. That, combined with the more time-consuming leveling and the fewer alts, it promotes a much more social experience where you have to network with other master craftsmen, and it has quite a big effect on the community as a whole.
So it's like real life.
And another thing, just really quickly here, is that the way you train these professions is also a bit different. Back then, they were split up into 4 levels, and that's Apprentice, Journeyman, Expert, and Artisan, and each of these increased your maximum skill by 75, up to the base maximum, which is 300, and they each have the following level requirements. Some trainers are quite hidden or require quests to unlock, like the ones tied to those certain specializations, for example,
it was fucking annoying.
but I won't go super in-depth there because this video is already way too long. But I did kind of gloss over that earlier, so I just thought I'd mention it really quickly here. And I did say that I wanted to give my personal picks for each class. Keep in mind that this is just me. A lot of this is really just based on preference and how much you care about min-maxing both PvE and PvP.
Nope.
Speaking of which, though, if you really do want to min-max, you're going to want to pick up engineering.
Absolutely.
With enchanting, alchemy, or blacksmith, and so on, you don't really need those professions to get benefits from them for the most part. You just need to pay more gold to other players for the consumables or enchants or whatever. But for engineer, you need it to be able to use all of their bombs and whatnot. For PvP, you're mostly interested in the ones that have AoE incapacitates, and also some of the gadgets such as the Death Ray or the Rocket Helmet, to name just two. And for PvE, you want that Sapper Charge for that AoE damage, and maybe the Battle Chicken for the group-wide speed buff if you're willing to sacrifice that trinket slot.
That's really
In terms of performance in raids and PvP, Engineer is going to be a must if you care about min-maxing, so I'll just throw that out there. And this goes for every single class too. But let's assume that you don't care about that, in which case my personal choices would be this. And keep in mind, this is assuming you're just picking one class here. Like, you probably don't want more than one enchanter across your entire account, right?
Yeah, this makes sense.
But for cloth wearers, I just go for tailoring and enchanting.
It's a good choice.
Tailoring is pretty self-explanatory. You can make a lot of your own gear leveling up, and some nice early endgame items if you get the patterns, and also bags for gold. Enchanting is nice as well, not only for yourself, but also for making some gold. You can always play the auction house and find some cheap greens, and flip them into essences for a profit, or just have one character to send all your greens to from all of your alts to keep yourself stocked up. For the rogue, I actually like herbalism and alchemy. Alchemy is good for any class, really. But my mindset here for rogue is that their thistle tea and their blinding powder both require certain herbs. You need swift thistle for the tea and fade leaf for the blinding powder, so having herbalism and alchemy just gives them more synergy, and it saves you some gold off the auction house. You can choose to go leatherworking and skinning if you want, but I prefer that on a druid just to optimize things. Obviously, the mindset here is with druids being leatherwearers, you can make some of your own gear. Leatherworker is sort of thought of as the weakest profession of them all, but that may also be their strength. It'll probably be more rare, so things should balance out. And again, that Onyxia skill cloak is going to be a must. I do also have alchemy and herbing for shaman as well, for you horde players out there. Again though, leatherworking and skinning also isn't a bad choice. Same logic for the druid really. For the hunter, I have engineer and mining. Mining? Not really for the guns, since most of the good endgame weapons are actually bows for the most part, but just because hunters have that dead zone in classic. If enemies get too close to you, you can't shoot them, so I see those grenades as being vital for them more so than the other classes. And again, remember, even if you don't use guns, you do have those trade-ins for arrows in your major cities. And lastly, for paladin and warrior, I have good old mining and blacksmithing. Pretty self-explanatory here. Big heavy plate melee classes having professions that make big heavy plate and melee weapons. Really though, for any of these classes, you could also interchange alchemy and herbalism, since those are sort of one-size-fits-all professions. For gold making, as I said, I really like that lazy man's approach, so if you really wanted to go ham with that and level a bunch of characters, you can pick up either alchemy, leatherworking, or tailoring on all of your characters for those cooldowns. And of course one character having herbalism and skinning to serve as a farmer to level them all up. With this method, you can just keep track of your timers and flip items from the auction house or trade chat for that one-click profit. It will take about 4 years to get going, although to learn the artisan level of these professions, you only need level 35, so maybe not as time-consuming as most would think. But that's about it. I know that these videos are way longer than they needed to be.
Thank you.
It's kind of funny how I always set out for these videos to be catered towards beginners, and they always end up being nearly an hour long.
Super complex.
I think it just goes to show just how much depth they have in Classic. But if you thought I skipped over some stuff and you'd like a more in-depth guide, profession by profession, I highly recommend the YouTube channel Frostadamus, because he's covered every single one pretty thoroughly.
Show me the gold. I can't.
I'll have a link to the playlist in the description for you. I hope that this gave you a good overall look at the professions as a whole though, and that it helped you narrow down your choices. If it did, I do have other guides aimed towards beginners that you may find handy.
Thanks, dude.
I have one for class picking and 2 more for race picking for both the Horde and Alliance.
Race picking?
And I'll have those linked in the description if you're curious.
Whoa, bro!
Anyways, I hope you found the video helpful. Like it if you liked it, and I'll see you in the next one.
This was a great video. I really liked it a lot. Frostadamus is pretty good videos too. I've watched his too. Like now that like I watched these.
Farewell for now, mortals. We hope you enjoyed today's video.
There you go.
See you again.
There's a video.
Soon.
Okay, yeah, so I really liked this video. Obviously, it was really, really great. I thought it was very well put together. Like Mad Season does some of the best WoW videos that are out there, in my opinion. I think they're very, it has like the right mix of, you know, informative content with just like a really good atmosphere, and I do really, really like his content. He's probably one of the best, you know, content creators out there on YouTube right now. So everybody should, you know, click that link and give him a follow and or a sub. And like the video if you liked it.
Bruh. Surprise, motherfucker.
My killers will not take no for an answer.